Hello and welcome to another one of those videos where I start yapping about all of the things that the developers have been yapping about throughout the week, responding to your comments and suggestions and hopes and dreams and whatnots and who-dads and doodads. Well, first of all, let us appreciate the title of this game that we're all anticipating, because of course, Project Caesar is just It is just a work in progress kind of code name, but we know the real title, and it's not really a secret anymore, as it has been announced that the real title is Imperator Iron Crusader Victoria Universalis Stellaris. Yeah, just a joke, but it's kind of funny anyway. And it kind of brings us into something that has been posted on Reddit recently, and I will bring that up. Not this is the soundtrack you're listening to, but this right here. There was a thread on Reddit asking in the Paradox Plaza subreddit, how much DNA from the other Paradox games does Project Caesar seem to have? And I know from myself, I will obviously put Imperator pretty highly up there, I'll put Victoria 2 up there, and I'll put EU4 up there. I think that's pretty obvious, and it's what I've been really kind of saying the whole time that I've been making these videos. And it seems like Johan is actually agreeing with me. Tram here saying he thinks there's a ton of Victoria 3 here, and, well, I completely disagree, of course. And so did Johan. He says, not much from Victoria 3 at all. When they started on Project Caesar in early spring of 2020, Victoria 3 was still working towards its alpha, and he had no clue about the details as he never worked on it. It takes far more from Victoria 2. And Pepega here, this makes me more optimistic. That's fair. I feel like that's fair. But Johan had another comment in here. It's literally just the same thing, really, saying Victoria 2, EU4, and Imperator, with some EU3, he guesses, as well, which is fair enough, and lovely stuff. But with that out of the way, let us go and have a look at the Saturday building for Imperator Iron Crusader Victoria Universalis Stellaris. And we're getting the Counting House today. It's an Age of Renaissance building that you may want in towns and cities. And the only thing that I really want to say here is we have the Counting House in EU4, but in EU4 the Counting House is a building that you get at Tech 23, 24, one of the two, I can't remember exactly, which is in the late 1600s, mid 1600s. It's pretty late. It's pretty late. You're not going to get that in the Age of Renaissance. But it's definitely seems like a lot of the late game buildings that we're getting in EU4 are going to be things that we're getting kind of early in EU5, and I'm all for that. It requires some paper. I think the image for paper has been actually changed a little bit. Maybe I'm wrong though. Books, gold, and some metal working business. Cost 50 gold to actually build it as well. And masonry, glass, and lumber required to build the thing in itself. But also, giving crown power to the location seems like a very valuable thing indeed, especially if you want to go down the absolutist route. And it kind of has nothing to do with what the Counting House did in EU4, which was basically, it's the upgrade to the workshop, increased your production efficiency. It was a brilliant building. Of course, you wanted to build it as soon as you could in every single one of your provinces. But yeah, it completely different use case here in EU5. But anyway, that's that out of the way. Let's go and have a look at the comments and responses to the disaster dev diary that we got on Wednesday. So, first of all, I'm going to open up this image right here, because it's going to be important in just a moment. Can we bonfire all the Renaissance vanities during the Savonarola disaster, which is this one right here? And Pavi here saying he's going to talk to his content designers in his team, because they might actually be interesting to be able to bonfire works of art, which I think is kind of interesting. We didn't really get any info on whether it's possible to destroy works of art that we got back in the Prestige dev diary. But maybe that is now going to be a thing. I mean, we knew that it was possible to destroy them, but not like intentionally, right? There's a chance of it being destroyed when a city is sieged, but we didn't get an idea of whether it's going to be something we can do intentionally, and maybe that's going to be the thing that we can do now. For example, with the War of the Roses disaster, your nation actually turns into a red and white rose flag nation, and one enemy turns into white and red flows flag nation? Or is it like an E4 where it's just rebels with a generic rebel flag? I would love this. I do agree very heavily that having civil wars act as separate countries is better than having them act as rebels. So hopefully that's what we're going to get here, and the flags changing depending on which side of the Civil War, which side of the War of the Roses, I should say, you're fighting on. I think that'd be fantastic. And St. Dave also just showing off the Tudor Dragon Standard, which I'm not going to lie, this is not one that I was expecting to see. It's been a long time since I saw this flag, and it is just as horrifying as it has always been. Sure, there we go, the Tudor flag. It's in all of its glory. Yes, glory is the word, isn't it? Civil wars in general could be a disaster. Horde instability could be a disaster. The collapse of China could be one. The mass death of natives after introduction of new illnesses could be a disaster. The instability of a multi-ethnic country like Austria-Hungary could be a disaster. Pavi here responding, civil wars have their own mechanics. Yuan will be able to talk about them in a future Tinto Talks. And by the way, Yuan is not doing the responses to this dev diary because he was feeling a bit under the weather. So hopefully by now he is feeling a lot better. Of course. They have disasters for hordes in China and situations for the Columbian Exchange, while multi-ethnics are usually covered by generic mechanics, though they could potentially look at a specific disaster for Austria-Hungary, a bit like EU4 137 does. Love to see that. There is a comment that we're going to get to in a moment, which basically is railing against the idea of having specific country disasters, and he wants them all to be generic. I'll comment more on that when it comes up, but I just want to point out initially that I'm entirely in favor of this kind of thing. I like country-specific flavor, and I don't understand people who don't. Is there no natural disasters? No Lisbon earthquake and the like? Disasters are strictly just negative situations. So, they have natural catastrophes present in different ways, half mechanical, half event-driven, and they'll talk about them in the future. Looking forward to that, of course. And then disasters are strictly just negative situations. Usually, yes, though you can end up in a disaster in a completely different situation compared to a start, which may not be necessarily negative. Things like civil wars could potentially be positive. If you have maybe screwed up with your societal values and you kind of want to hit the reset button, a civil war might be kind of useful. I mean, in EU4, of course, court and country was a benefit to your nation, and I think even civil wars were net benefit due to the amount of stability you gained at the end of it. But I would assume there's going to be some ways that you can turn disasters to your benefit. Maybe not all of them, of course. Are the Hussite Wars also disaster? Perhaps a situation? This is something I mentioned in my video, of course. I said that Hussite thing could start as a disaster and then spiral itself into a situation as it starts to affect more countries. And initially I thought, I read this and I was like, damn, I was right, started a disaster and ended a situation. But development-wise, and I'm not the only one to make this mistake as well, as Elarius said, you confirmed it for the Hussites, but will generic disasters also be able to develop into situations? And Pavia clarified here, what he meant is that the Hussite Wars were initially thought of as a disaster, but then it evolved into a situation while they developed it, as had an important impact outside of Bohemia, which is fair enough. There are disasters triggered by or while being in an active situation, but not the other way around. Which, okay, fair enough. I think it could be a situation. I'm trying not to use the word situation where I don't mean the mechanic. I think it could be the case where, for example, the Hussite Wars, when the situation fires for the Hussite Wars, initially it will only be affecting Bohemia. They will be the only country involved in the situation. And so in that way, it kind of acts like a disaster, but then more and more countries are able to jump into this situation as it starts affecting them as well. And I guess that would be easier to have as a situation from the very beginning, rather than having it as a disaster that then, that mechanic is, okay, we're shelving that mechanic, and now we're going to start using the situation mechanic. Just a little bit more convoluted. This does seem like a better way, because what is a disaster but a single-player situation, after all? Will disasters have lasting consequences after they're resolved, since countries currently used to boost the absolutism cap? So, for Pavia here saying that their country can make your country lean more either towards absolutism or liberalism, which are long-lasting effects, though not permanent. They may always be able to turn back your country again from one to the other. Fair enough, good to know. I generally like your artwork, but this eagle is clearly of the 20th century style. And that is the one that I wanted to point out here. This is the eagle he is talking about here. So I didn't know that they had a change in the Polish eagle, but apparently that is the case. And St. Dave here is asking for a reference for one circa 1400. And Aquila here coming in with some references to coins, I guess, of circa 1400. And generally, the eagles just look a little bit more scrawny than the plump one that we're seeing in the artwork there. But yeah, I love that he's come with references. It is fantastic. I like this feedback thing that is going on here. Love that. This honestly sounds like a copy-paste from EU4. Very relevant name. Which is sad, since disasters in EU4 were gamey and uninspiring, tedious, and posed no real threat after getting familiar with the game. That's just not true. That's just, that's just a dumb comment. So Pavi here responding, our disasters are usually a bit more interactive than those of EU4, as they usually have some more actions to do beside killing rebels and getting random events, which is true. I mean, we saw in the Tinto talk, which is, well, find it, Court and Country, we got buttons to click. That's already more involved. Like, even if you don't consider this to be like a huge upgrade, I mean, it's kind of hard to say because we don't know what these buttons do. We will, because it has been a response in the dev diary that we'll get onto. But even then, this is more than we get in the vast majority of EU4 disasters. It just is. So, my opinion is that Dansk is Dansk, and he's wrong and silly for saying that they're copy-paste, because they're clearly not. I think the Palaiologan Civil War should be a disaster. It is. Good to know. Can we get info on diseases? Are they disasters? Nope. They may be either systemic or triggered by situations such as the Black Death, as they usually affect more than one country. Good to know. Can they get both a Ming explosion and a Yuan explosion? So they got the Red Turban Rebellion situation, which we already knew of. And then there is also a generic Crisis of the X-Dynasty disaster. They'll talk more about in detail about the mechanics in the Tinto flavor dedicated to China. Of course, we're all looking forward to Tinto flavor that's coming up. I think he said the 9th of January, if I remember correctly. In my opinion, most of the disaster focus should be on generic or semi-generic disasters. No. Having flavor be less centralized is better, in my opinion. You keep your opinion to yourself. Well, no, don't. It's good for you to share your opinion. I just disagree with it. Of course, some nation-specific ones are good too. They should really happen if conditions are fulfilled. So Pavi here saying that their philosophy, is a good one, is that a mix is what they want for the game. So some generic ones and some country-specific ones is what they want for the game. That's what I want too. I'm gonna like that comment, because that is a good comment. Is what I want to see. Are disasters repeatable? If I get one War of Succession disaster, can it happen again if the conditions are fulfilled again? Some, yes. A succession crisis is a succession crisis no matter what. Some, I guess, disasters will not be repeatable then. And I guess I'll leave it up to you to determine what those would be. Is the American Revolution a disaster from the perspective of a Great Britain player? No. I can assure you it was not. It was more like a weight off the shoulders, a burden put down, just never mind. Or is that a generic colonial independence disaster that might happen? So there is a situation for colonial revolutions, and they aim to have some specific events and flavor for the US independence as well. Good to know. Hang on, I just reckon it. Father Loris, what do you do? The king looks like something from Steam's new and trending tab. Okay, I do recall in my video, somebody had mentioned that Father Loris was going to not be happy with the artwork that we got right here. And it seems they were correct. I had not seen this comment from him. But for those of you who are unaware, every month or so, or maybe twice a month, I do a podcast with Father Loris and with Liana Hafer, and we basically just talk about all of the month's Tinto Talks things, go through all of the dev diaries, the comments, and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, he is, Father Loris is quite outspoken on his dislike for the character models. Not gonna lie, this he kind of has a point here. He definitely kind of has a point there. But anyway, moving on. Do you have famines as a disaster? So he also goes over why he wants them. Famines are kind of portrayed organically by their system for food supply, demand, and capacity. That said, they've already been thinking of a proper system to have famines be unexpected shocks, usually because of climate conditions impacting negatively food production. It's not something they have in the game, and that you can't promise to have. I want them to add it. I do want them to add it, because thinking about it mechanically, as in I'm playing the game, I will work on setting up my food network, I guess, my food production chain, and then I feel like it would kind of be a set and forget, save for, you know, upgrading buildings as I get more technologies and such. And that's just kind of not how food worked in real life, especially when it comes to famines. Famines were caused by unexpected events. A famine was caused by a war happening, and I guess in that way this system without any changes could definitely model that. But also climate situations, like the Little Ice Age, for example, caused famines all across Europe. The volcanoes going off in Indonesia, I think, is the cause of the Little Ice Age in Europe. Although I might be mixing up two separate events. I think, no wait, a volcano in Indonesia was theorized as being the cause of the revolutions in 1848. God, memory is difficult. But essentially what I'm saying is, like, these natural disasters that you might not get any notice of, right? You playing in Britain might get absolutely zero notice of a volcano going off on the other side of the world. But that event, that catastrophe, can and would affect you because global temperatures going down as ash is, spread into the atmosphere, and, more sunlight is being reflected away, so the temperature of the world cools by a couple of degrees, and that causes a famine. Something along those lines could absolutely be modeled in-game, and right now it's not, but that is an unexpected shock. The potato blight of the 1850s, I want to say, that was something that was unexpected. It's an unexpected shock. No one was expecting the potato crop to fail as hard as it did, and that was something that happened in not just Ireland. There was a lot of countries that had experienced the blight on potatoes, and it's also something that any crop could really have. That kind of unexpected shock should, I think, definitely be in the game, so that I can't just be, as Britain, just completely comfortable with my food situation as soon as I get, the islands united and my buildings, farms all set up. Then I'll know, okay, well, my farms make this amount of food, I've got this population, so unless I get a huge population boom, I'm going to be totally fine. I can be a net exporter of food and make some money that way. these system shocks to model, events that happen in real life should totally be a thing, in my opinion. If you ever add non-historical content to the game, will there be an option to turn it off? This is another comment that I am very much just disagreeing with. I think it's kind of silly, right? There will be, and there is in EU4, it's not a historical simulation, right? EU4 is not a historical simulation. EU5 will not be a historical simulation. It just isn't. What we're doing is an ahistory game, right? As soon as you take control and you change the path of your country, then things that were not historical are happening already. So turning off non-historical content to the game will turn off the ability to play then. That's what you're asking if you take your line of logic as far as it should be, right? If you don't want any non-historical content in the game, don't fucking play it. Because the mere act of you playing it is adding non-historical elements to the game. So to start, I don't know, watch a time lapse of borders changing. Yeah? Go watch Emperor Tiger Star. There you go. There's your map game with, no ahistory shit. I really, really, really dislike heavily this idea of the ability to turn off non-historical content. And by this I mean, disasters that did not happen but are being added, right? Situations that didn't happen as they happened in history but are being added because they plausibly could have. I don't know how to express just how much I dislike this, and also, I don't think it's an interesting point, and I don't think it should be bookmarked for the future. I don't think the devs should waste their time on whenever they're making an event, like, oh, did this perfectly, apply to something that happened historically? Let me just mark that as yes or no, so that, somebody who stupidly turns on this frickin' game rule at the start of the game is now able to, not experience this plausible event. As you can see, I'm the only one who's disagreed with this, this thing, and I don't know, maybe I'm misunderstanding something. Maybe somebody who's watching this is seeing this comment by Rich Zakunki, or whatever his name is, and is like, yeah, no, I totally agree with this, and Lambert, you're being stupid, and here is the reason why I want this, and blah, blah, blah. Let me know, because right now I see no good reason to respond to this with anything other than no. It is what it is. Moving on, though. What do the buttons in the Court and Country do? Don't tell me that you just press them and make an estate more loyal, wait for the cooldown and so on, like the government mechanic buttons from E4, which were extremely shallow and uninteresting. I feel like, the latter part wasn't really necessary. Just asking what the buttons did was probably good enough. But without going into too much detail, legitimate parliament abolition, pronunciation of that is interesting, has two effects. Reinstate the legislative assembly has one fixed effect and four variable effects. Reign in the nobles, burghers, clergy, and peasants trigger a different event each, with 3 different options per event, with each different effects each. The effects usually interact with other systems and mechanics, so for instance the first 2 will impact how the parliament of your country works, and the other is about the management of the estates, which is interconnected with the parliament among other features. Yeah, so again, this is not shallow. This is not just a disaster with events and such like we get in EU4. And I will say, maybe a part of this is taking inspiration from something like Anbana. If you have played Anbana and you've gone through a disaster as the dwarves called the Horde Curse, you'll know that as soon as this disaster fires for you, in your they have all of these buttons, I guess, in the decisions menu, where you basically have to fulfill some conditions. Then you can click the decision, and then that opens another part of the event that is the Horde Curse disaster, and it works really, really well. And I guess maybe this is a way of adding, like, I can imagine this Horde Curse being in EU5 and all of those buttons that I'm just explaining in the Decisions tab now being here, which is fantastic for modders. Like 100%, I think this is a great improvement to the system, which was already a pretty decent system, if I'm being honest. So yeah, I like it. But that is all we have for this Wednesday Dev Diary responses. Let us move on to talking about not any of that. We're talking about that. We're talking about South America and the responses here. And essentially the responses can be broken down into one thing, and that is we don't like what the wastelands look like. Signed, Brazilians. That's essentially it. But we'll go through and have a look at what their specific problems are, and it's likely that things are going to change. It is likely that things are going to change. So, firstly, one thing that I'd said is that I hated that they had gone back to using the, filling in the wastelands with the areas map mode, or the provinces map mode. Nope. For anyone interested, this is how the provinces map mode appears to the players, with impassable wastelands distinguished as null entities by graying them out. The version with the wastelands colored in by province is just in the debug build, so they can see what they're doing when they paint the map. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. This is exactly what I wanted to hear. This is fantastic. St. Dave, beautiful. Thank you so much. This is way better. For instance, let's, if I open up the dev diary itself and find the provinces map that they had shared, lovely bit of scrolling to do, and I'd said, where is Manaus? Where is Manaus? Well, now we can have a look, and we see that Manaus is, gosh, I actually can't see it at all. I probably should have looked beforehand. There's Madeira. Is this Manaus? Is that the same color, I wonder? Maybe? Maybe that's the one? They've changed colors, though, because this is yellow now, Amazon. This might be Manaus. I feel like this might be Manaus. But essentially, this is way more legible. This is absolutely 100% more legible. We can actually see what's going on. And I am very, very happy with it. I am very, very happy with it indeed. So, great. Absolutely great. And here, right, this is one of the things that is being said. As we all thought, they had the Mata Atlantica in mind when they made these weird wastelands in Brazil. And funnily enough, this is also a really good way of showing the wastelands in Brazil. Huge Amazonian wastelands, but also a bunch down the coast here. And this is what is being talked about here. This is the Mata Atlantica, which is essentially the Atlantic forest, I think is a direct translation. Correct me if I'm wrong. But basically, this person disagreed with the wastelands that are in the eastern coastline of Brazil, and gave some pretty decent, feedback as to why that should not be the case. Pavi saying great feedback here. So Mata Atlantica here. This is the Mata Atlantica. I guess this is the coastal forest, and so this is what is being theorized is what they're doing when it comes to these wastelands here along the coast. And maybe they shouldn't be wastelands, because apparently they're quite fertile, and the Portuguese were able to colonize it with relative ease. I don't know. Again, I don't know. But certainly if that is the case, then that should be the case in the game. There's another really good suggestion, question, request, asking for how the base trade goods are distributed, and this is for the entire world. 12.42% of the RGOs in the world are lumber. And I do not believe this is taking into account population. This is just 12.42% of the locations, of the 27,000+ locations in the game, are lumber. Then we've got livestock, wild game, all above 10%. Fish is pretty high, of course. Wheat, very high. Fur is the largest non-food that isn't also lumber. I probably should have remembered the lumber was the top there before I started that sentence, but whatever. But then, yeah, it goes down into the, low percents very quickly. And, yeah, the highest non-1% one is copper, which is nice. Medicaments here at 1.04%. You'll love to see it. But the least populous trade good is, in fact, coffee, with then potatoes taking up a little bit higher, but there's like almost double. I just think this is a really cool and really interesting table. This is probably something that I'm going to be using quite a bit, so I'm actually going to bookmark this this comment. But yeah, I think it's just very super interesting. And of course, this is not something that is going to stay static as well, right? Because we know that when colonization happens, goods can change. When the Columbian Exchange happens, goods can change. So yeah, really cool. The one thing I think that I have not seen before is soybeans. I don't think I noticed them in any of the Tinto maps. So if anyone saw some soybeans on any of the other Tinto maps, and let me know where I should find them. Because, yeah, I didn't see them. Wow, potatoes and coffee are more valuable than spices. Yeah, he's basically taking them as being, more rare, meaning more expensive, which is just not the case. Fewer locations isn't the same as being more valuable. For example, the base price of spices is much higher and costs much less to transport than potatoes. Every, what, 10 euros worth of saffron? Yeah, you'll probably get a small baggie, I guess. Furthermore, the pop demand for spices is very high across the world, which pushes the price up further. Love that. Great response. The Cerrado is further inland. Cerrado, again, talking about the Mata Atlantica, which is why this comment is what I had in mind when I said it had fertile soil. Yeah, look, comments again talking about Brazil and how it's maybe not where they want it to be right now. Pavi's response here: one methodological note. 20th century design maps, or density maps, sorry, are not always aligned with the population density of previous centuries. Because, one of the things that he mentioned here, I think this here is, yeah, population density in 2010. Not very useful. And Pavi giving a personal response here. One case that he knows very well from his own background is the region that is today Castilla y León in Spain was among the most densely populated on the Iberian Peninsula in the 14th and 15th centuries, but in the 21st century it's among the least densely populated areas in the entirety of Europe. It's not saying that the maps are not useful at all, but they need to be handled with care as it might be misleading for the period covered in Project Caesar. And I feel like this is something that I would struggle with, right? If I was to be wanting to critique, say, the map of Great Britain, how would I go about showing off that, oh, no, the population density here is all wrong because, it's current day, there is a city here, so clearly this city must be here 700 years. Well, it's just not, right? It's not the case. My own personal hometown is Middlesbrough, right? Middlesbrough in the UK is a town today of, I have actually got no idea how many people live there. I'm going to assume like 90, 100,000. Maybe more. I'm going to have to check. Middlesbrough, Wikipedia, how many people live here? 150,000. Okay. But if you think about where that is in regards of, 1337, well, there was like 12 people who lived in Middlesbrough in 1337. It was like an abbey. So it's just not relevant. It is simply just not relevant. But yeah. So here there is another thread about the Brazilian locations. somebody having, you know, a lot of good feedback, and this is before the Brazilian map was here. Like, this is from the 9th of November, but there was you know, responses here from Pavia on some really bad feedback, and I just want to, I'm mostly pointing this out to be like, look, there is good feedback and there is bad feedback. Bad feedback is something like, it's honestly astounding how little care was put into the region in Project Caesar. The worst part is that I'm not even a little bit surprised. It's something similar in EU4 in late 2020. Mostly no one cared then. Come on. Look, there is a way to give feedback that is constructive, and we saw that in one of these threads that yeah. Look, disagreeing with what it is, giving sources, giving some information, great feedback. And there's more besides this that I have not pulled up. There's good feedback. But then it's just, this is being a dickhead. Yeah, this is just you being a dickhead. And Pavi here saying, sorry to say, this is not true. I'm glad to say that this is not true. Right? All the locations they put in Brazil have native names. There are up to 87 different cultures in the region, and there's several religions portraying native beliefs. They've put a lot of effort into portraying the rich diversity of pre-colonial Brazil. That said, the design of Mata Atlantica was a proposal to portray the pre-colonial situation as better as possible. They may have to think a bit more about the situation of the colonial period so that the Brazilian community would find the region way more recognizable and closer to what they think it should play like in Project Caesar. Something that has been clearly communicated to us, and we'll do our best to review the region with the help, feedback, and support that the Brazilian community gives us. You are being way more chill, patient with this guy than I could ever do at all. And yeah, Carlos says, thank God the Brazilian community has spoken in unison on the matter. Now I pray we're heard. That's what Tinto Talks is about. You give feedback, and then if you're right, things change, right? We've seen it so many times. But, you know, you don't get your way if you're an asshole. Just don't be an asshole. That's why they're doing the Tinto maps in the first place, and they've already shown how applying the feedback they receive for the game in the Tinto maps feedback posts. Yeah, it's almost like we have examples of that. And then, you know, he doubles down. He doubles down. Like, what? There's no reason to double down, right? And it's the same critique I had 4 years ago. Bias and Anglocentrism. What the fuck? Why are we Brits catching strays here? People that work on Brazil and Project Caesar is not part of the EU4 team 4 years ago, and it's difficult to be Anglo-centric when none of the devs that worked on the region are native to the Anglosphere. Oh, I mean, yeah, I mean, just, you know, don't be a dick. There's no reason for it. Another post from back in September, again, building feedback to Brazil. There's been a few of these types of threads. But here, Pavi is saying, just want to let you know that they've been reading that thread prior to today's Tinto maps. It's as the hot topic is the extension of the Mata Atlantica, and these have been my words about it. One other thing they wanted to discuss is they tried to portray the Mata Atlantica, the original forest cover that was present in Brazil before the Portuguese colonized it, and a different type of land exploitation started. In this regard, they've been reading the feedback of the Brazilian community, and they want to say that the intention here is to portray the most realistic situation for 1337. That said, they already internally discussed that we may need to reduce its scope so it doesn't look so extreme. I want to hear their opinions about it. My opinion is, at the end of the day, these are the countries that you can play in South America in 1337. Note how none of them are in Brazil. I think when it comes to modeling Brazil, specifically, you know, the Brazil bit of South America, the relevant map that you should be trying to portray is not the one from 1337. I think the most relevant one that you should be trying to portray is the one from 1480 something, whenever the Portuguese first started settling Brazil. And I don't know when that is. 1480 something is something I'm pulling out of my ass. It's probably around then, maybe a little earlier, maybe a bit later. I don't know. I mean, I know the whole rhyme about Columbus sailed ocean blue, 1492, blah, blah, blah. whatever. It's around then, whatever. That, I think, is when you should be looking at for your portrayal of how the forest cover is and how the map is, because the way that the player will be interacting with Brazil will not be as a native who is there in 1337, it will be as a colonizer in 99.999% of cases, and the colonial viability of the region is what is most important in a game where you're only going to be interacting with this place as a colonizer. I think that is where I'm sitting. That is what my opinion is when it comes to how to represent this area. It should be represented in a way that a player who is colonizing it will recognize it as, you know, this is what my colonial country would be able to do in this area with this terrain. That's my opinion. This means that its rework will be good as the feedback they receive. So again, if you have some feedback, let them have it. Just don't be a knobhead. We kindly ask you, encourage you to portray more adequately the region by posting your feedback and proposals with sources and maps if possible in the Tinto Maps thread, though it's perfectly fine if you discuss it first, like in these kinds of things. But yeah, just don't be a dick when you're doing this. You know, it's very easy to not be a dick. And I don't know why I have this map open, because I don't have anything to talk about there. But yes, that's it. That's all I have for you. Long one, over 40 minutes long on this video. There's a lot to talk about, and yeah. On Wednesday, we will get another thing. I don't know. We have no idea what it's going to be. It is essentially Johan saying we might get a Christmas present. I think we might be seeing the terrain map for the first time, like as in the proper terrain map, not a hint of it behind an event. And that's what I think we're gonna get. I would like to know what you think in the comment section below, whether that's what you think you're gonna get, or just talk about anything that happened in this video. I want to thank you all very much for watching. I hope you guys have enjoyed the video and found something interesting in there. And I urge you to subscribe if you haven't already. It would greatly help me out. But until next time, until Wednesday, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.